The cell was narrow and cold, carved from old stone that held the night inside it even when morning came. Joan of Arc sat quietly on a rough wooden stool, her hands resting in her lap. Chains circled her ankles, heavy and dull, as if they had grown tired of holding her. A small window high above allowed a thin blade of light to fall across the floor. Dust floated slowly through that light, drifting like silent thoughts. The air smelled of damp earth and iron. Time moved differently here, slow and heavy, as though each second needed effort to pass. Joan of Arc breathed in and out, steady and calm. She had learned to listen to her breath during these long hours. It reminded her that she was still alive, still present. Outside the cell, footsteps came and went, sometimes stopping, sometimes fading away. Voices passed through the walls, muffled and distant. None of them spoke her name with kindness. Yet she held her head straight, even when she was alone. She thought of the fields of her childhood, of open skies and wind moving freely through tall grass. Those memories felt like another life. Here, the stone pressed close, as if the walls wanted to hear her thoughts. She wondered if courage could survive in a place like this. Then she realized that courage was not loud. It did not shout or strike. It simply stayed. The problem that weighed on her most was not fear of death, but doubt. Doubt crept in quietly, like the cold that entered her bones at night. She asked herself if her voices had truly guided her, or if she had misunderstood them. The judges had planted these questions carefully, repeating them until they echoed in her mind. When she was tired, when hunger softened her strength, those echoes grew louder. Each day followed the same pattern. The door opened. Light shifted. Questions were asked. Joan of Arc answered simply, using words that felt honest and plain. She did not try to impress. She did not try to escape. She only tried to remain true to what she believed, even when belief felt fragile. After the questioning, she was returned to silence. At night, the cold deepened. The stone drank the warmth from her body. She wrapped her arms around herself and whispered prayers that felt more like conversations than requests. She did not ask to be saved. She asked for clarity. She asked for peace. Sometimes, in the quiet, she felt a gentle presence, not as a voice, but as a steady calm. It did not promise safety. It only reminded her to endure. Sleep came in pieces. Dreams blended with waking thoughts. In one moment she was standing in armor under a wide sky. In the next, she was back on the stool, staring at the same patch of floor. The mind, she learned, could travel even when the body could not. This knowledge gave her a small sense of freedom. The days blurred together, yet each one mattered. Joan of Arc knew she was being watched, measured, judged not only for her words, but for her silence. She chose her silence carefully. Sometimes saying nothing felt like the strongest answer. In that cell, stripped of movement and sound, she began to understand herself more deeply than ever before. She was no longer the figure people argued about. She was simply a young woman facing the end of her path. And in that quiet understanding, a slow, steady resolve took shape, not sharp or angry, but firm and unyielding, like stone that has learned to stand against time. Morning arrived without warmth. The light through the small window shifted slightly, marking another day. Joan of Arc stretched her stiff legs as much as the chains allowed. Her body ached, but the ache was familiar now, like an old companion. She welcomed it in a strange way. Pain reminded her that she was still connected to the world outside her thoughts. The guards arrived with food that tasted of nothing. She ate slowly, not because she enjoyed it, but because she knew her strength mattered. Each bite was an act of quiet defiance. They wanted her weak, confused, broken. She chose instead to remain present. Even the smallest choices felt important here. When the questioning began again, the room felt larger than her cell but no kinder. Voices spoke at her, not with her. They asked her to explain herself again and again, as if truth could be worn down by repetition. Joan of Arc answered as she always had, simply and without decoration. She did not argue. She did not beg. She spoke as someone who had already accepted where this path led. The relatable struggle she faced was not unique to heroes or saints. It was the struggle of being misunderstood. They saw danger where she felt purpose. They saw stubbornness where she felt faith. Being unseen in this way hurt more than chains. She realized how deeply humans needed to be recognized, even by those who disagreed with them. Back in her cell, she sat with this pain. She allowed herself to feel it fully. Tears came, slow and quiet. She did not wipe them away. Crying was not weakness here. It was release. When the tears ended, she felt lighter, as if something heavy had finally been set down. A gentle twist began to form in her thoughts. What if this prison was not only a place of punishment, but also a place of preparation? Stripped of banners and noise, she was meeting herself without armor. She saw her fears clearly, but she also saw her compassion. She felt sorrow for those who judged her, trapped in their own need for control. She began to speak softly to the silence, telling stories of her past, not to escape, but to honor it. She remembered faces that had believed in her, moments when courage had felt natural. These memories did not make her long for freedom. Instead, they gave her gratitude. She had lived fully, even if briefly. At night, the cell seemed less hostile. The shadows felt familiar. She leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes. Her prayers changed. They were no longer questions. They were expressions of trust. Whatever waited beyond this suffering, she felt ready to meet it. The guards continued their watch. The days continued their slow march. But inside Joan of Arc, something had settled. The storm of doubt quieted. In its place grew a calm acceptance, not of injustice, but of her own role within it. She could not control the outcome, but she could control how she met it. This understanding did not erase fear completely. Fear still appeared, especially in the darkest hours. But it no longer ruled her. She learned to sit beside it, to breathe with it, until it softened. In this way, the prison did not take her strength. It refined it, shaping it into something quiet, steady, and deeply human. The announcement came without ceremony. Joan of Arc sensed it before she was told. The air felt heavier, the movements around her more deliberate. When the words reached her, they landed gently, almost calmly. She listened, nodded, and returned to her cell. The waiting was nearly over. This final stretch of time felt different. Each moment carried weight. She noticed small details she had once ignored. The pattern of cracks in the wall. The sound of water dripping somewhere beyond sight. The rhythm of her own heartbeat. These ordinary things felt precious now, anchors in the present. A quiet fear rose when she thought of the fire. She did not pretend otherwise. The body feared pain, and she honored that fear without judgment. She spoke to herself softly, reminding herself that fear did not erase meaning. It simply proved she was alive. In the silence, she reflected on the choices that had brought her here. She did not regret them. Even the hardest moments had carried purpose. She saw now that her life was not defined by its ending, but by the sincerity with which it was lived. This realization brought a deep sense of peace. The gentle twist revealed itself fully. Joan of Arc understood that her story was no longer only hers. It had become a mirror for others, reflecting courage, doubt, faith, and vulnerability. She could not shape how it would be told, but she could shape its heart. That heart, she decided, would be compassion. She forgave those who had harmed her, not because they deserved it, but because forgiveness freed her. Holding anger felt heavier than chains. Letting it go created space inside her, space filled with calm and clarity. As night fell, she lay back and rested. Sleep came more easily than before. Her dreams were quiet. No battles, no voices, only light and open space. When she woke, she felt ready. The guards arrived earlier than usual. She stood carefully, steadying herself. Her body was tired, but her mind was clear. She met their eyes without challenge or submission, simply as one human meeting another. In that brief exchange, something softened. Walking away from the cell, she felt a surprising sense of gratitude. The prison had been harsh, but it had also given her time. Time to understand herself. Time to accept. Time to forgive. Few people were granted such clarity at the end of life. As she moved forward, each step felt deliberate. She carried no illusions of rescue. Instead, she carried dignity. That dignity wrapped around her like a cloak, unseen but deeply felt. Whatever awaited her, she would meet it as she had met everything else, with honesty and calm. The final morning unfolded slowly. Joan of Arc noticed the sky, pale and wide, and felt a quiet wonder. She breathed deeply, filling her lungs with air that felt different from the dampness of the cell. Each breath grounded her in the moment. People gathered, their faces a mix of curiosity and distance. She did not search for understanding in their eyes. She focused instead on staying present. Her heart beat steadily. Her hands were calm. The fear she expected was there, but it no longer overwhelmed her. She thought once more of her life, not as a series of trials, but as a whole. Childhood, purpose, struggle, solitude. All of it belonged. Nothing needed to be erased or rewritten. This acceptance felt like the final gift she gave herself. As the end drew near, she closed her eyes briefly. Her final prayer was simple. It held no request, only gratitude. Gratitude for life, for strength, for clarity. When she opened her eyes again, she felt ready. The fire approached, real and undeniable. Joan of Arc faced it with quiet resolve. She did not see it as an enemy, but as a passage. Pain came, sharp and sudden, but her focus remained inward. She held onto the calm she had cultivated, letting it carry her through. In her final moments, her mind was clear. There was no chaos, only stillness. She felt herself releasing, step by step, from fear, from body, from breath. What remained was peace. The story of Joan of Arc did not end there. It continued in the silence she left behind, in the questions people would ask, and in the courage others would find within themselves. Her final days in prison had not broken her. They had revealed her humanity. And in that humanity, simple and strong, her legacy lived on, not as a legend of fire and judgment, but as a quiet reminder that even in the darkest places, clarity, compassion, and calm can endure.